أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناهم وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملت أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أن نطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلموا نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أحد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أذل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أن خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لا مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين واضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشاها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
दफ़ा और बावज़ बुलंद नारे सलावत। पत्थर हटा के लाश से ज़ैनब ने दी सदा क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो कैसे पड़े हैं जिस्म के टुकड़े जुदा जुदा क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो पत्थर پتھر ہٹا کے لاش سے زینب نے دی صدا، کیا تم میرے ہے میرے غریب کا کیا حال کر دیا، گھوڑوں سے لاشا دشت میں پامال کر دیا، پہچانوں کس طرح سے بدن سے ہے سر جدا، کیا تم میرے حسین ہو، پتھر ہٹا کے لاش سے زینب نے دی صدا، کیا تم میرے حسین پہچاننا تمہارے لیے بھی کٹھن ہوا، دیکھا ہے پہلی بار جو زینب کو بیردا، آتی ہے شرم جلد بتا دو مجھے ذرا، ارے کیا تم میرے حسین ہو، پتھر ہٹا کے لاش سے زینب نے دی صدا، کیا تم میرے حسین ہو، کرتا رہا ہے ذبح کی کوشش طرح طرح، خنجر کے ہیں کٹی ہوئی گردن پہ بھی نشان، کاٹا ہے کس طرح سے ستمگار نے گلا، کیا تم میرے حسین ہو، پتھر ہٹا کے لاش سے زینب نے دی صدا، کیا تم میرے حسین ہو، آہستہ سے جواب دو ہے ساتھ اس کی ماں، کیا اب تمہارے پاس ہے معصوم بے زبان، ننھا سا لاشا کس کا یہ سینے پہ ہے رکھا، کیا تم میرے حسین ہو، پتھر ہٹا کے لاش سے زینب نے دی صدا، کیا تم میرے حسین ہو، کیا لے گئے ہیں لوٹ کے سب کچھ یہ اشقیاء، تن پر بچا ہے ماں کا یہ کرتا سلا ہوا، نکلے تھے جب خیام سے یہ حال تو نہ تھا، ارے کیا تم میرے حسین ہو، پتھر ہٹا کے لاش سے ज़ैनब ने दी सदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। वो भी तुम्हारी तरह से जख्मी ना हो कहीं, दिल को मेरे ये लगता है मौजूद है यहीं। आती है माँ के रोने की नजदीक से सदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। पत्थर हटा के लाश से ज़ैनब ने दी सदा, क्या तुम मेरे हुसैन हो। सलाम।
سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع لذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله، بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. أما بعد، فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أعلم حيث يجعل رسالته. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Condolences on this night, or on this day, due to the Shahadat of Imam Taqi al-Jawad alayhi afdalus salatu was salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When we speak about the Imam of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, you find that there was a great level of confusion within the Muslim Ummah, because of a number of variations of reasons. The first of these reasons was that when Imam al-Rida alayhi salam left this world, he had not directly announced to the people that his son will be his successor. Because of the political environment of the Abbasids and the oppression towards the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam, Imam al-Rida never had the opportunity to announce to the people publicly and say that my son al-Jawad will be my successor. The second reason is, and we know this, is that Imam Jawad alayhi salam was the Imam from the age of 6. Ibn Rustam al-Tabari, a 4th Hijri scholar, Imami scholar, when he writes the historical events from the transitions of the Imam from Imam Rida alayhi salam towards Imam al-Jawad, he says that people could not handle, or people could not accept the fact that Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam was the new Imam. He said there was a great level of confusion in the Muslim Ummah. When they came to realize that Imam al-Jawad was the successor of Imam al-Rida, they saw that he was still just a young man. He was 6 years of age. Again, they were unsure. Is this really the Imam who succeeds our previous Imam al-Rida alayhi salatu wasalam, or no? He says that even to such an extent that the people, the Shias in the nearby cities, were also in the state of confusion. So now the question that I want to kind of elaborate and focus on tonight is what evidences can we use or proofs that we can use to prove the Imamah of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salatu wassalam despite his very young age. And we have 3 different proofs. And of course, in the course of the discussion, there's a very important question that needs to be asked, it needs to be explored, and it's a question for you to take home tonight, to think about and to create an action plan, if you wish, surrounding that particular question. There are 3 different evidences that we can use to prove the Imam of Imam Jawad alayhi salatu wasalam. The first of these evidences is that yes, Imam al-Rida, before he left this world, he did indicate to his companions, not publicly, privately, within his own close circles, amongst his very, very close companions, he did announce to them or did tell them that my son Muhammed al-Jawad alayhi salam will succeed me. And we have a number of these different traditions. You find, for example, when we refer to a companion by the name of Nawfali, Nawfali was considered to be one of the closest companions of Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. One day he comes towards Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. He says, Yabna Rasulillah, there's a question. He says, what is it? He says, who will be the Imam after you? In fact, he doesn't even start off with that. He says, there's chatter in the society saying that your father, Al-Qadim alayhi salam, he says he hasn't died. As you know, in the time of Imam Al-Qadim, there were those who believed that he went into Ghaiba. The Waqifiyah, for example, they stopped at the 7th Imam. They believed that Imam Qadim went into Ghaiba and he will reappear as the Mahdi later on. He says there is chatter amongst the Shias that say that your father hasn't died. The Imam replies, he says, كَذَّبُوا فَلَعَنَهُمُ اللَّهِ. They have lied. And may Allah's curse be upon them. Because they are the ones who caused disunity within this ummah. They have seen the authority I have, and they have rejected that authority. He says, Yabna Rasulillah, what do you want me to do? As in, what's my responsibility right now? He says, Nawfali, your responsibility right now is to know that the Imam after me is my son Al-Jawad alayhi salam. And then he says, or he goes on to say, he says that from his sons, and he names them, he says that from his sons there will be the likeness of Al-Hali, and then from him, after him Al-Hasan, and then after him Al-Qa'im. We'll come to that discussion in a moment. So An-Nawfali, despite his close relationship with Imam al-Rida alayhi salatu wasalam, you realize that he by name appoints his son Al-Jawad alayhi salam to succeed him. Then you have, for example, the likes of Bizanti. Bizanti, they say that one man by the name of Ibn Najashi came to him and he says to him, your sahib, your Imam al-Rida, who's going to succeed him? He says, I don't know. Let me go ask him. So he went towards Imam al-Rida alayhi salam and he says, Yabna Rasulillah, who's going to succeed you? He says, Ibni Muhammed. He says that my son Muhammad al-Jawad alayhi salatu wassalam, he will succeed me. Now this is very interesting. When you actually examine the biography of Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, they say that he was a very old man. Well, not a very old man, but he was quite late in his ages before he even had his son al-Jawad alayhi salam. He was 45 or something around that age before he was given Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. And of course, when you contextualize this using, for example, his history, you'll notice that the Arabs used to get married fairly young. By the time they reach the age of 30, they have God knows how many sons or daughters. So for him to be 45, for example, it was quite odd for the people to say, well, look, you're the Imam, but it seems that you're not capable of having any children. As in, are you rightfully the Imam or no? It's a very interesting discussion. So the people used to question the veracity of the Imamate of Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, simply because he was not, or he did not have a son until the very later years of his life. So when you refer to these particular ahadith, these ahadith explain to us that Imam al-Rida prophesizes the coming of his son. And when his son is then given to him, he makes an announcement to his very close companions, the likes of Bizanti, the likes of An-Nawfali, that he will succeed me. Now, of course, when you refer to some of the interactions between the two Imams, it's amazing because you'll see that when Imam Rida alayhi salam is taken from Medina and he's sent towards Khurasan, he's made the crown prince of Ma'mun, he still keeps an interaction with Imam al-Jawad. He sends a letter. This is a very profound letter he sends to Imam al-Jawad. He writes a letter to his son. He says, my son. You see, this was a very intricate, very intimate way of how Imam al-Rida used to train his son to be or to take up the post of Imam. He sends a letter to his son. He says, my son, news has reached me that when your servants take you from your house, when they take you out from your house, they use the small door in the garden. They don't take you out from the front gates. They use the small back doors. He says, don't do that. It's because your servants are stingy and they have this level of hatred in their heart when you show generosity to the people around you. Now, of course, in those times, and of course we have this today, you have the poor and the weakened of society. They would go towards the palaces and they would seek some rizq and some sustenance from them. And that's exactly what they used to do. The fuqara, the masakin, they would come towards the houses and the palaces of the noblemen and they would seek something from them. They say, your servants, they don't want you to start giving them charity, so they take you out from the back door. Tell them that you want to be released or you want to leave from the front gates. And then he says to his son, my son, when you carry or when you go out from your house, always carry some gold and silver with you. Carry some coins with you. When these fuqara and the masakin come towards you, give them something. When your uncles ask from you, do not give them less than 50 dinars. If you want to give them more, give them more. When your aunts seek you for charity, do not give them less than 50 dinars. Likewise, if you want to give them more, give them more. Always carry something with you so that you're able to give something to the people when they need it. It's a very profound lesson. Very profound lesson. Today we should try and implement this with our children. Carry a few coins here and there. When you leave the house and you see someone who is in need, make it a habit for them to give charity. We have boxes in our houses, yes? Give some coins to our children so that they can put it in the boxes. Nowadays, we all electronically give sadaqah and so on and so forth. But keep these boxes in your houses for your children at least. Make it a habit for them to give charity. It's a very good habit for them to pick up at a very young age. So these are the first proofs that we rely upon when we speak about the relationship between Imam al-Jawad as well as his father Imam al-Rida, but also the highlighting the imamate of Imam al-Jawad. Imam al-Rida used to disclose this information to his very close companions. My son al-Jawad is the imam after me. The second evidence that we can utilize is often something that has been used by the imams before as well. And that is the prophecy of Al-Qa'im Al-Hujjah, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. It's a very interesting discussion. You see, every single Imam, as well as the Prophet of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, prophesies the coming of Al-Qa'im. After the sixth Imam onwards, there was a lot of discrepancy, a lot of confusion. No one knew who the seventh Imam was. And then, after a while, they realized who the seventh Imam was. Likewise, the eighth Imam. Likewise, the ninth Imam. Likewise, the 10th and the 11th Imam. Likewise, Imam al-Hujjah alayhi salam. There's a lot of confusion within the Muslim Ummah as to who these personalities were, who the Imams of the Ahl al-Bayt were. And it wasn't easy for them to extrapolate the answer so that they are to be guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you refer to the prophecies of Al-Qa'im, of Ali Muhammad, you realize that this is a prophecy that has existed well before even the Prophet of Islam. But when you refer to the Prophet's hadith, the Prophet has mentioned a very powerful hadith, something that we all know of, that after me there will be 12 caliphs. As in, who are these 12 caliphs? Who are they, or what are their identities? What are their names? See, when you ask the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they're not capable of giving you any names. They're not capable of identifying who these 12 caliphs are. If you refer to the Bani Umayyah, well, it's not the Bani Umayyah because they exceed the number of 12. If you refer to the Bani Abbas, again, the Bani Abbas, they exceed the number of 12. As in, who are these 12 caliphs that the Prophet is referring to? What happens is the Prophet in another hadith says, no. They're not just 12 caliphs from the line of Quraysh, but they are the sons of Fatima. So all of a sudden now the Prophet is now directing a very specific lineage. It is to highlight that this lineage is not just from the lineage of Quraysh, but it comes from a very, very specific line. And that is from the line of Fatima. You see, what's happening here is that because there was confusion as to who the Imams were, they would often refer to the prophecy of Al-Qa'im. And they would say, because the Qa'im is from my lineage, therefore I am from amongst the Ahl al-Bayt. You see, it's a very interesting question, and think about this, it's remarkable. If I ask you, how do you prove the Imam of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam? You say, well, his father, Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, appointed him, as in chose him, commissioned him after his death. So who chose Imam Husayn alayhi salam? His son, Imam Hassan. It's usually the predecessor who chooses the successor, isn't it? Even conventionally in our societies, you have a CEO of a company, for example, or whatever, successor is often chosen by the predecessor. But here, when you look at the system of the A'immat al-Athhar, sometimes the successor authenticates and reinforces the imamah of the predecessor. Then you have another classification of a hadith, and they are in the tens. We're not talking about one or two hadiths here and there. We're talking about 90, 100 hadith. Whether Imams alayhi salam explain that no, Al-Qa'im is not from the line of Fatima alone, it is from the line of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. He is the ninth of the third. Specifically the hadith, this is how the hadith mentions it, expresses it. He is the ninth of the third. As in the ninth generation after the third Imam alayhi salam. So, now it's very much specific. It's not from the lines of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, rather it's from the line of Imam Husayn alayhi salatu wasalam. Then the hadith continues. There's another classification of hadith when it speaks about the seventh Imam. It says that Al-Qa'im is the fifth of the seventh. He is the fifth generation from the seventh Imam. It authenticates the Imamate of Imam Al-Qadim alayhi salatu wasalam. Because he is from the line that was spoken of, that was prophesied by the Holy Prophet of Islam. Keep your eye on Al-Qa'im. When you realize which lineage Al-Qa'im is coming from, it authenticates the imamah of the imams before him. So when people were confused as to who the imam was after Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Imam Al-Qadhim as well as the other imams would come forward and say that Al-Qa'im is the fifth from the seventh, Musa ibn Jaffer alayhi salam. Then you have another classification of ahadith. Again, in the tens, he is the son of Ar-Ridha alayhi salam. So those who were confused as to who the imam was after Imam Qadim alayhi salam, all they had to do was direct their attention to Ar-Ridha alayhi salam. Why? Because Al-Qa'im would be from his lineage. You see, side point here. A lot of people, because when they saw Imam Ar-Ridha alayhi salam at such a age, and he did not have any children, some of them even began to abuse him. And they said to him that an imam cannot be deficient, physically or spiritually, emotionally or psychologically. An imam is an archetype, is a role model for us. There is no way that an imam can be deficient, but you, Yabna Rasulullah, you're infertile. You're not capable of having any children. How can you be the imam alayhi salam? The moment Imam Jawad alayhi salam is born, the people retract their statements. Why? Because now Imam alayhi salam is not infertile. In fact, Imam Jawad alayhi salam, just through his mere existence, Mawlud al-Mubarak, as the hadith says, Imam Rada alayhi salam says, it solidifies, it verifies the imamat of Imam al-Rada alayhi salatu wasalam. Look, the succeeding imam reinforces the imamat of the predecessor. So you have another classification of a hadith which says that he is from the line of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. He is the third of the ninth. So if people are confused as to who the imam was after Imam al-Rada alayhi salam, they would look towards Al-Qa'im and they would say that because he comes from the lineage of Al-Jawad, therefore Al-Jawad has to be from the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. And not only that, because the 9th, the 10th, the 11th imam were closer to the time of Al-Hujjah Al-Qa'im alayhi salatu wassalam, you found naturally what happened was, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, sorry. the ahadith became very, very specific. The ahadith became very specific. In which way? They began to name exactly who these imams were. So for example, they say one companion, they came to Imam Rida alayhi salam and he said to him, this Al-Qa'im that you're talking about, who is this Al-Qa'im? He says, my son Muhammad, his son Ali, his son Hassan, Al-Qa'im is the fourth from amongst them. Very specific names are mentioned to show who the next Imam will be until the coming of Al-Qa'im. They say one day, Di'bal al-Khuzai was a poet, a masterful poet. Person who used to perform the Aza of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam in the presence of Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam. They say one day he came into the presence of the Imam and he began to recite a qasida, a poem. And towards the end of the poem, he concludes the poem by mentioning these words. He says, خروج إمام لا محالة خارج يقوم على اسم الله وبركات يميز فينا كل حق وباطل ويجزي على النعماء والنقمات. He says this Qa'im, he will most definitely rise. And when he rises, he will rise with the name of Allah and the barakat, the blessings of Allah. And through him, right and wrong, haqq and batil will be made clear. And he will recompense for all of the blessings, na'ama, and all of the adversities, naqamat. Imam al-Rida begins to cry. Hadith says the Imam begins to cry. And then he looks towards Di'bal. He says, Ya Khuzai, do you know this Qa'im that you're talking about? Wallah, I testify that Ruh al-Qudus has helped you mention these lines of poetry. Do you know who this Qa'im that you're talking about? Do you know who he is? Di'bal al-Khuzai, he replies, he says, Yabna Rasulullah, I don't know. I've just heard a hadith here and there saying that he will be from your lineage. The Imam then mentions to Di'bal al-Khuzai, he says, Al-Qa'im, after me will be my son Muhammad. After him will be his son Ali. After him will be his son Al-Hassan. And then after him, the fourth from amongst them will be Al-Qa'im Hujjat. Al-Qa'im of Ali Muhammad. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. He says this man will be given such enforcement from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that even if there is a single day that is left on this earth, Allah will prolong that day to the extent that the Imam will come back, he will come back to his people, he will reappear, and he will establish peace and justice in this world the way the world has been filled with injustice and corruption. So the prophecy of Imam al-Hujjah alayhi salam verified and authenticated the imamah of the imams that came before as well. So that's the second way. The first method was through direct mentioning. Imam al-Rida directly mentions that my son al-Jawad will be my successor. The second way is through the prophecy of Imam al-Hujjah alayhi salam. The third way was through the knowledge of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salatu wasalam. You see, in the state of confusion, and to be honest, we all are living in the state of confusion, especially in this day and age. The level of information that we have in our hands, the level of access to information that we have in our hands, it's very easy for a person to question his faith. What do we do under such circumstances? Under such circumstances, we go back to history and we examine who were the most knowledgeable of the time. Naturally, you follow the one who is most knowledgeable. When you want to get, for example, you want to go for an operation, you search for a doctor or a surgeon who is the most knowledgeable, the most skillful of the time, isn't it? You would go out of your way to get access to his skills. Likewise, when it comes to religion and understanding the sources of religion, we refer to those who are most knowledgeable in such fields. When you refer to the biographies of the Ahlul Bayt, and I've said this before and I'll say it again and again and again, you will not find anyone who is as knowledgeable or more knowledgeable than the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. And that's a guaranteed fact. To the extent that a challenge can go out. Find anyone who is known to be more knowledgeable than the A'immat al-Athhar. When you look at the biography of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, the public debates he has, leave aside the public debates he has, from a very young age, from the age of 6, you realize that in his time there was no one equal to him, let alone anyone who was more knowledgeable than him. That authenticates his imamah. And I go on to as far as saying that today I am a Shia simply because of the veracity, because of the power, because of the knowledge, the ibadah of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, and how he demonstrated that from the age of 6. You see, many of us, we ask this question, why am I Shia today? With the access of information that we have, there are so many videos on YouTube of the Ahlul Sunnah, for example, bombarding certain lies towards our faith. The Salafis and their propaganda against us, the Ahl Shia, you find that it's very easy for us to actually listen to their words and actually believe in what they're saying with regards to our own faith. And we're at fault as well. We're at fault because we have not invested our time and our energy. We have not exhausted our efforts in learning our religion. So when a small point comes across to me, I start questioning the veracity of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. I start questioning the authenticity of the Imami madhab. And this happens at a rapid rate now, simply because there are hundreds upon thousands of videos on YouTube that millions have access to. You find, for example, the discussions of tawassul. It's an open discussion nowadays, isn't it? A discussion that has been made public, and that's fine. Ask questions. Research into these areas because it strengthens your faith. When people ask certain questions that question your faith, this is good, this is a blessing because it now gives you the opportunity to go back to revise your religion and to strengthen the core faiths or the core aspects of your religion. That is if your niyyah is khalis, if your niyyah is sincere. If you're questioning for the sake of argumentation, if you're questioning for the sake of debating and bringing the other person down to prove that you're right, you will move away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's an ayah in the Holy Quran where Allah says that those who perform the recitation of the Quran, those who perform the dhikr of the Quran, they move away from Allah. How is that possible? It's possible if your niyat is not khalis, if your niyat is not sincere, if it's not pure. If it's just for the sake of argumentation, the sake of debating, you will not go very far. You will move away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you ask with the sincerest of intentions, Allah will strengthen that faith for you. That is, if you ask Allah to show you what's right from that which is wrong. When you ask yourself, why am I a Shia? What happens is a lot of people now question certain intricacies, certain intimate details of our faith. Tawassul. Baba, the Salafis are saying that, the Shias are like the mushrikeen. So how? There's one video on YouTube, for example, that's been circulated saying that I left Shia Islam because I realized how close it was to idol worship. So how? So you and I, how we associate and communicate with the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, that's exactly how the mushrikins communicate with their idols. In the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear. فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَا اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. Do not call upon anyone other than Allah. You Shia, you go to Karbala, you ask for Imam Husayn, you ask for Abu Fadl al-Abbas. Bab al-Hawa'ij, you consider them. But this is just how the mushrikeen used to communicate with their idols. They used to call out and they used to seek sustenance and risk from their idols. You do that with the Imams alayhim salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So just as how the mushrikeen used to communicate with their idols, you communicate with the Imams in the same way. Allah says in the Holy Quran, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Seek help only and only from Allah. You seek help from Imam Ali. This goes against the whole principles of the Holy Quran. It's a very good argumentation. It's a very good point that's being made. But these points aren't new. Our scholars have dealt with these answers decades ago. It's just that we've not accessed that information, or this information has not been spoken of publicly yet. Or for example, someone will come forward and question the authority of the A'immat al-Athar, that they don't have miraculous powers. Say, the Holy Quran is very clear, إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ, that Allah has power over everything. The moment you say that the Imams have the power to control molecules and atoms and to perform miracles, now you're placing them on the same level as Allah. You're saying that now they are Qadir and not just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's shirk. Again, it's a very good point, but it's not the point of our discussion today. These questions are being raised on a public platform and we listen to them and we think that, wait, hold on a second. The madhab of the Imami is falling apart because it's all based on principles that go against the Holy Quran. Let alone, forget the ayats where Allah speaks about the miraculous powers of the prophets or even the non-prophets. Ignore those. When it comes to the A'immat al-Atar, it is impossible for them to have any power, wilayat takwiniya, power or authority over the universe. Or for example, when it comes to ilm al-ghayb, Allah says in the Holy Quran, Inna Allaha wasi'un alim. Allah has ever expansive knowledge. The moment you say that the Imam has ilm al-ghayb, knowledge of the unseen, you're now placing them on the same level as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's shirk. You're now associating the qualities of Allah alongside His creation. That's shirk. That's what the idol worshippers used to do. Forget the fact that Rasulullah was given certain aspects of ilm al-ghayb. Forget the fact that even Nabi Isa alayhi salam was given certain aspects of ilm al-ghayb. Forget the fact that Allah can even share some of His powers with His creation. Leave aside those discussions. When we hear such discussions and points being made, what happens is ultimately we place a question mark on the authority or the authenticity of our faith. Now the point here is, naturally what happens is, because we question the underlying principles of the Imami madhab, we slowly move away from it. And if we question the Imami madhab, what happens is we give strength to the other madhab. This approach is a false approach. It's a fallacy to approach the discussion from such a perspective. It's naive, it's very shallow. When you want to talk about these intricacies, collect all the verses of the Quran, collect all of the hadith and the riwayat of the Ahlul Bayt, and of course the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and see where exactly what we believe in, how far or to which extent do we believe in them, and to formalize an aqidah based on these sources. Then we proceed from there. What happens here is, you find that our youths or sometimes people question the veracity of the Imami madhab based on these small intricacies. When you focus your direction on these small intricacies like ilm al-ghayb, wilayat takwiniya, tawassul, istaghatha, all of these things, shafa'a, does it hinder the overall authenticity of Shia Islam or no? It doesn't. These are specific discussions relying on imama, not relying on tawheed. You're focused on such small issues, you're forgetting the bigger issues, which is the usul ad-din. Today, you could be a Shia and not believe in the miraculous power of the Ahlul Bayt, and you could still be recognized as a Shia. There's no issue in that. You could be a Shia and not believe in tawassul. You could still be a Shia and be identified as a Shia. You could believe that the Imams have no knowledge of ilm al-ghayb. You could still be a Shia. It doesn't question the whole veracity of the Imami theology or the Imami madhab. That's the point. Because nowadays what happens is if people say, well, tawassul is against the principles of the Holy Quran, again, separate discussion, it's against the principles of the Holy Quran, therefore the whole of Shia Islam has to be wrong. That's acceleration. That's a perspective that is not acceptable at all. And I say this to you, when it comes to the levels of consistency, you will not find the level of consistency that is found within our madhab anywhere else outside of our madhab. And that is guaranteed. You want to see which madhab is closer to the truth, which madhab is closer to the reality, closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Go back to the usul ad-din. Don't talk about the intricacies of imama and judge the whole madhab based on it. Go back to the usul ad-din. Go back to tawheed. See what the other madhabs have said about Allah and compare it with what the Ahlul Bayt have said about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will never find the descriptions of Allah that is found in Nahjul Balagha. When Amir al-Mu'mineen speaks about Allah and the qualities of Allah, the sifat of Allah, you will not find any companion or any scholar for centuries yet to come who speaks about Allah the way the Imam has spoken of in the first generation of Islam. And that's a guaranteed fact. The Imam alayhi salam, one day a man came towards him and said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, explain to me Tawheed in one line. He says, At-Tawheedu an la tatawahhama, wal-adlu an la tattahima. You could create a whole philosophy based on these words. 2 lines. What does he say? He says, Tawheed is what your imagination can never understand. Your mind, our minds are unlimited. We can think about things, God knows how far we can go with our thoughts. He says, your mind is limited still, especially when it comes to understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you look at the course of history, for centuries you found Muslims believing that Allah has a bodily form, that Allah has a leg the way you and I have a leg. Allah has a thigh the way you and I have a thigh. Allah has a hand the way you and I have a hand. Today, for example, people will start questioning this and say, no. These ahadith are fabricated and so and so. But for centuries, Muslims used to believe in this. And then the Imam goes on to say, وَالْعَدْلُ أَلَّا تَتَّهِمَ. It says, when things happen in your life, don't turn to Allah and blame Him for the adversities that come towards you. Yes, sometimes Allah tests us. Allah challenges us, making certain things difficult for us. But that doesn't mean that we turn to Allah and we blame Him for it. Sometimes we have to take that blame on ourselves. There are certain sins that we perform. When we perform them, it attracts adversities and misfortunes in our life. It's because of our misdeeds that we are going through certain levels of sufferings and adversities in our lives. For centuries, Muslims used to blame Allah for the tragedies that used to take place in the Muslim Ummah. Look at the Bani Umayyah. Whenever they used to shed blood, they would say, well, Allah made me do it. The Imam prophesies this. He says, Al-adlu Allah tattahima. He says, Al-adl, the justice of Allah is that you do not blame Him. You as a free choice, as a free person, you have the choice to do right and wrong. It is you who makes the decisions at the end of the day. It is not for you to blame Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You could create a whole philosophy based on these two lines. Profound words of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. When it comes to the Risala, when it comes to the Anbiya, when it comes to Nabuwah, you will not find the madhab, you will not find the teachings of the Ahl al-Bayt with regards to our madhab found anywhere else outside of our madhab. When you refer to Bukhari and Muslim and see what they say about the Prophet of Islam, you wouldn't know whether you should cry or laugh. Whether it's comical, whether it's an insult projected towards the Holy Prophet of Islam. Whereas when you refer to our hadith, when you refer to our madhab makes it clear that thousands of years before Adam was created, the first nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first creation was Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The difference between our madhab and the other madhab with regards to Nabuwah is the isma of the Anbiya. There are those who believe that the prophets used to commit sins, from amongst them gunahaya kabira, the greatest of sins before they were commissioned as prophets. Whereas our madhab is consistent from the very beginning that the prophets are born prophets and they are sinless. Not once, not even the blink of an eye do they commit sins or move away from the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it comes to imama and khilafah, again, the level of consistency that we have is unmatched. You think that imama and khilafah is a stretch within our madhab? Find out how a caliph is chosen within the other madhab. The shura? Where is the shura mentioned in the Holy Quran? Does the Holy Prophet speak about the shura? If the shura is so important, it's such an important fabric of society, especially after the Prophet's demise, then has the Prophet mentioned anything about choosing a successor? And if it's so important, the Prophet must have said something that a shura must consist of this many numbers of people, for example. The person, the candidate for successorship should have such and such qualities. He should be of such and such age. You should, for example, look at these sifat and not the other sifat, and so on and so forth. Nothing is mentioned with regards to the shura, within the Quran or outside of the Holy Quran. When you speak about imam and khilafah within our madhab, the level of consistency is amazing. What do we say? We say that the imams, the successors of the prophets, are chosen directly by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one has the right to choose the successor of the prophet. And this is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is mentioned within the Quran. When Allah speaks about the prophets, He says, الَّذِينَ اسْتَفَيْنَا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. It is we who have chosen from our servants. Allah uses very specific words in the Quran. We have chosen our servants. وَلَقَدْ اسْتَفَيْنَاهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا. And we have chosen him in dunya. وَمِمَّنْ هَدَيْنَا وَاجْتَبَيْنَا. And from amongst them whom we have chosen and we have guided. They're very specific words. Allah is pointing out that He is the one who chooses the Imam or the Caliph. It says, وَاجْتَبَيْنَاهُمْ وَحَدَيْنَاهُمْ, and we chose them and we guided them. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَجْتَبِي مِنْ رُسُلِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. It is Allah who chooses from His prophets whomever He wishes. When He speaks about Adam, He says, ثُمَّ اجْتَبَيْنَاهُ. Then we appointed Adam. We made him a prophet the moment he came onto earth. Allah chooses the prophets from the time of Adam all the way to the time of Khatam al-Anbiya and everyone in between. What happens after the Holy Prophet of Islam? Does the whole Sunnah of Allah just disappear overnight? Does the Sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala change overnight? That it changes from direct appointment to the people choosing democratically? It doesn't make sense. Well, if the shura is the way in which the Muslim ummah, the caliph is chosen, then why doesn't Abu Bakr choose shura to appoint Umar ibn al-Khattab? Whereas he directly appoints Umar ibn al-Khattab. Why doesn't Muawiyah, for example, become the caliph of the ummah through a shura? He becomes a caliph through military power. There's a level of inconsistency found in the other madhabs that you will not find within our madhab. Our madhab is absolutely consistent. The direct appointment of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam was known in Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Was found in Ghadir Khum. Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, when they come and they say that he was only 6 years old, they may laugh at us, but this is completely consistent with the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah gives His risala to whomever He wishes. He allows certain personalities to carry His message. And it is not the responsibility of the people to choose who carries His message. They came and they questioned him, you're only 6 years old. He said, well, hold on a second. Yahya ibn Zakaria was a young man when Allah appointed him. Isa alayhi salam was just in the cradle when he was appointed as a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he spoke to the people. Why do you question my authority? There's consistency. Shaheed Muhammad Baqir as-Sadr rahmatullah alayhi, he says the fact that Imam al-Jawad was only 6 years old, it tells us that this is completely in line. There's consistency within our madhab that Allah is the one who chooses. Who on earth would create a shura to choose a 6-year-old to be a leader? Allah chooses, and Allah knows who to give His message to. And Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam does not shy away from this either. The famous debate that he has with Yahya ibn Aktham. Yahya ibn Aktham, the chief qadi of the Muslim empire. The famous debate he has with Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam about the kafara for the person who hunts during the state of ihram. There's another debate he has with the Imam alayhi salam. He approaches the Imam, he says, I've got a few ahadith for you. I just want to hear your opinions on these ahadith. He says, go ahead. He says, there's a narration from the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where he says that that Jibreel alayhi salam one day descended, he came towards the Holy Prophet of Islam. He says, Ya Rasulullah, Allah gives you His salams. And Allah has a message for you. He says, what is this message? He says, I am pleased with Abu Bakr. But go find out from Abu Bakr whether he is pleased with me or no. Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, when he hears this hadith, he says, look, I'm not here to deny the fadail of Abu Bakr. It's not my position to deny or accept anything with regards to Abu Bakr. But there are certain principles that I work with. He says, what are these principles? He says, we first and foremost refer to the hadith of the Holy Prophet of Islam. In Hajjatul Wada, he turned to the people, he said to the people, Ya ayyuhan nas, after me, people will associate lies to me. They will fabricate a hadith and they will put my name in it, when I had never said such a thing. Know that these people who have attributed lies to me, their position will be in the fires of hell. He says, I agree. He says, when you come across these ahadith, we place them alongside the Quran and we place them alongside other ahadith which are stronger. This is agreed. He says, this hadith that you've quoted me goes against the Quran. He says, in which way? It says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Holy Quran, He is closer to us than our jugular vein. There's another hadith which says that Allah is closer to us than the movements of our hearts. That Allah knows exactly what goes in our minds. Allah knows exactly what we're thinking. Allah knows our intentions. It says the satisfaction or the dissatisfaction of Abu Bakr, how can this be hidden from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He says, I have another hadith for you. He says that Rasulullah has said that Abu Bakr and Umar are to the earth the way Jibreel and Mikael are to the heavens. He says, the Imam replies, he says, such a comparison is not acceptable. You're not comparing apples to apples anymore. He says, why not? He says, when you look at Jibreel and Mikael, these are the highly esteemed angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From the moment they were created, they were infallible. They did not commit any sins. And they did not move away from the obedience of Allah even for a moment. Whereas Abu Bakr and Umar, the majority part of their lives, they were polytheists. They were both in their 60s when they left this world. Take away the 23 years of the prophethood of Rasulullah. Before that, for 40 good years, they were polytheists. A great portion of their lives, they used to worship Allah. You can't compare these two personalities with Jibreel and Mikael. He says there's another hadith. It says the Holy Prophet has said that Abu Bakr and Umar are the two chiefs of the elders in paradise. The Imam says, look, this goes against the hadith, the very famous hadith of the Holy Prophet of Islam, where he says, Al-Hasan wal-Husayn Sayyid shababi ahlil Jannah. He says not only that, but this was a fabrication of the Bani Umayyah. Their propaganda against the Ahlul Bayt was widely known. He accepts. He says there's another hadith. It says that Rasulullah has said that Umar is the light of heaven. Is the light for the people of paradise. He says, well, I can't accept this either. He says, why not? He says, look, in heaven you have Allah, you have the Mala'ikat al-Muqarrabeen, you have the Anbiya al-Mursaleen, you have the Prophet Adam, Rasulullah. They are not lights for the people of heaven, that only Umar is the light for the people of heaven. He says, I have another hadith. He says that Rasulullah said that Umar speaks through the Sakina. Meaning, that Umar speaks only the truth. And when he speaks on behalf of an angel. He says, well, I'm not here to deny the fadail of Umar, but we can all agree that Abu Bakr was greater than Umar, wasn't he? He says, yes. He says, that's why he was chosen as the first caliph, isn't it? Abu Bakr was the first caliph because he was higher in rank compared to Umar ibn al-Khattab. He says, absolutely. He says, there's a hadith mentioned by Abu Bakr when he famously sat on the pulpit, on the member, and he said, Ya ayyuhan nas, there is a shaitan, there is a Satan that misguides me, that causes me to deviate. Whenever you see me deviate, turn me to the right path. So the fact that Abu Bakr was capable of being deviated by this shaitan, it's hard for me to believe that Umar speaks on behalf of an angel, and he constantly and consistently speaks the truth. He says, I have another hadith. He says, the Prophet of Allah has said that if I had not been commissioned with prophethood, Ya Umar, you would have been commissioned with prophethood. He says, look, this hadith goes against the Holy Quran. He says, in which way? He says, the ayah says, وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِن نَبِيِّينَ مِيثَاقَهُم. That before the prophets came into existence in dunya, Allah had taken a covenant with them, pre-existence, and made them prophets before they even came into existence in dunya. It is impossible for a prophet to go against the covenant that they made with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, the prophet never worshipped an idol even for a blink of an eye during his lifetime. Whereas you have a personality who for a good 40 years of his life worshipped an idol. It's hard to believe that Allah would have chosen an idol worshipper to be a prophet and commission him with prophethood in comparison to the Holy Prophet of Islam. And besides, there is another famous hadith where the Prophet had said that before Adam was even between body and soul, Allah had chosen me to be a prophet. Allah had made me a prophet. This is what the Holy Prophet of Islam has said. He said, there's another hadith. He says, what is this hadith? He says that the adhab of Allah, if it was to be presented to the people of the earth, if the adhab of Allah was to come towards the people of the earth, everyone would perish except for Umar. He says this goes against the Quran. This is in which way? Allah says, وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُعَذِّبَهُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ فِيهِ وَأَنْتَ فِيهِمْ. That as long as you, O Prophet, are amongst the people, the adhab of Allah will not come towards them. The level of consistency that we have within our madhab, you will not find in any other madhab in the religion of Islam. Don't question the veracity of the Imami madhab because of these small intricacies. Focus on Tawheed, focus on Nabuwah, focus on Khilafah, Imama, and you will see the level of knowledge that we have within our legacy. Al-Ma'mun realizes this and he makes him his son-in-law. He marries him to his daughter Fadl. Al-Mu'tasim realizes that people are attracted to Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam because of his knowledge. They plot, they scheme. Fadl then delivers the poison to Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. When he consumes the poison, when he drinks the poison, she begins to cry. The Imam looks at her and says to her, he says, Wallah, from this day onwards, you will never see sakina in your life. You will never see sukunat in your life. There will never be peace in your life anymore. They say that she was inflicted with an illness so severe that it began to eat her body. Her body began to rot. It began to chew her body. This is a princess of the Muslim empire we're talking about. She spent her entire wealth looking for a cure. There was no cure for her. She became poor and she died because of this illness. Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, the pain of the poison, it begins to affect his body. He begins to move from left to right. Bishidda. Erratically, he moves from one position to another to calm the pain of the poison. Whenever he became thirsty, he would drink some water. And then eventually he left this world. Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam then prepares his janazah. Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam prepares his ghusl, his kafan, and buries him alongside his grandfather Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam in Baghdad. We say to Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, Yabna Rasulullah, at least your son was there alongside you. At least Imam al-Hadi prepared your janazah and gave you your rights. Yabna Rasulullah, at least you left this world not having to think about your women and your daughters. At least you left this world knowing that your women and your daughters were not taken as prisoners. Yabna Rasulullah, what of your grandfather Abi Abdullah alayhi salam? What of your grandfather on the 10th of Muharram? Imagine Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam in his last moments, his thoughts go out to his sister Zainab, his thoughts go out to his children, the orphans and the women of his household. Imagine knowing that he is helpless and knowing that he is not capable of helping them anymore. The patience of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. When Abu Abdullah alayhi salam left this world, they say Zainab, she began to gather all the children. She began counting these children, but she saw that one child of Abu Abdullah alayhi salam was not there with them. This child had left the camps. Ya Sukayna, where are you, Ya Sukayna? What does Zainab do? She runs towards the battlefield. When she runs towards the battlefield, she sees the Shuhada. Their heads have been severed. She's walking along the bodies of the Shuhada. Imagine the patience of Zainab until she comes across the body of Abu Abdullah and she sees Sukayna embracing the chest of Abu Abdullah. Ya Sukayna, what brought you here, Ya Sukayna? She says, oh my Aunt Zainab, when I saw the enemies come towards us, when I saw them attacking us, when I saw them burn down our tents, I thought I should come to my father and seek refuge from my father. I knew that my father would protect me. Oh my Aunt Zainab, when I came to him, I saw that they've taken his head. I saw that his body has been covered with spears and arrows. Ya Jaddaha, هذا حسين بالأرى مقطع الأعضاء مرمل بالدماء إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون.
پر محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
إن الله ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله.
على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم اجعل قلبي بارا وعملي سارا وعيشي كارا ورزقي دارا وأولادي أبرارا واجعل لي عند قبر نبيك محمد مصطفى صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم مستقرا وقرارا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. اللهم صل أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. اللهم صل أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. اللهم صل أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. اللهم صل على محمد. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر، وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر. ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر. تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر. سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد، الله الصمد، لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم، يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. الله أكبر. 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 الله أكبر.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك، لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. اللهم صل على محمد. هيا على الصلاة، هيا على الصلاة، هيا على الفلاح، هيا على الفلاح، هيا على خير العمل، هيا على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي. صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي. صل على محمد وآل محمد.
سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي. صل على محمد وآل محمد.
سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل الفرج. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم بموضع رزقي، وإنما أطلب بخطرات تخطر على قلبي، فأجول في طلبه البلدان، فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران، لا أدري في سهل هو أم في جبل، أم في أرض أم في سماء، أم في بر أم في بحر، وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من، وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك.